Okay, sales leaders, picture this. It's 2025. AI is like everywhere in sales, right?
Yeah.
But here we are, still dealing with micromanagement.
Crazy, right.
It's like, come on, haven't we moved past this? You think with all the leadership training, all the new tech, we'd have figured it out?
You'd think so.
But nope, micromanagement is still a thing. And it's hurting businesses, especially sales.
Big time. It's like this weird paradox. We're supposed to be all about, empowering teams, encouraging innovation.
Right.
But then we have this old school leadership style hanging around.
Totally. And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're going to unpack why micromanagement is so stubborn, why it won't go away, even in sales, even in 2025, when things are moving so fast.
Yeah.
And we're going to give you some real, actionable advice, stuff you can actually use to break this cycle as sales leaders.
Absolutely.
So get this right. All the research we did, it points to one major thing. Fear. Yeah, fear. There are like these three core fears at the root of it all. Fear of failing, fear of being irrelevant, and fear of judgment.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because those fears are often buried deep down.
Subconscious.
Yeah, exactly. Sales leaders might not even realize it's these fears messing with how they act.
Makes sense.
Take fear of failure, for instance. Sales is all about pressure. Hit those quotas, deliver results. It's intense.
Oh, yeah. It's a high-stakes game. So much pressure.
Yeah.
I could definitely see how that leads to wanting to control every little thing.
Right. Like if I'm in control, nothing can go wrong.
Exactly.
But ironically, that's when things actually start to fall apart.
Interesting. So how does that play out?
So picture this sales leader, right? Totally terrified of missing that quarterly target. So they hover over every single deal, every email, every decision. It's under a microscope. And what happens? Their team, instead of focusing on customers and closing deals, they're constantly second-guessing themselves, waiting for approval, losing momentum.
Makes sense. They're like frozen, can't take any risks.
Exactly.
So the fear of failure actually makes failure more likely.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're so afraid of it, you end up making it happen. You hinder your own team.
Wow.
And then there's the fear of becoming irrelevant. Things are changing so fast in sales. New tech every day. The way customers buy is different. New strategies all the time.
Overwhelming.
It is. And some sales leaders, especially those who've been around a while, they might start to feel left behind.
I can see that. Like their expertise is fading.
Yeah, exactly. They see their team using new tools, new approaches, and instead of being excited, they feel threatened.
Like, hey, what about my way of doing things?
Exactly. And that's where the fear of being irrelevant kicks in. And how do they react? By trying to control everything, micromanaging every detail, trying to prove they're still the expert, still in charge.
Makes sense. Trying to hold on to that feeling of relevance.
Exactly. But what they don't realize is that kind of control, it backfires. It kills creativity, stops people from trying new things, and prevents the team from using those new approaches that could actually make them successful.
So they're actually holding their team back just because they're scared of looking out of touch.
Right. It's a shame because embracing those new technologies, those new methods, that's key to staying ahead in sales today.
Totally. So instead of clinging to old ways, sales leaders should be encouraging their team to constantly learn, to stay on the cutting edge.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about that third fear, the fear of being judged. It's like this pressure to prove yourself, show everyone you're competent, you're in control. And I think that's true in any industry.
Oh, yeah.
But in sales, it's even more intense. Because your performance is so public, the numbers are tracked so closely.
Right. Every win, every loss, every deal, it's all on you as the sales leader. And when you're under that kind of scrutiny, it's easy to think the only way to guarantee things go right, to make myself look good, is to micromanage.
So it's like they're trying to create this image of perfection.
Exactly. If I control every tiny thing, there can't be any mistakes.
No setbacks, no bad reflections on me.
Exactly. But here's the irony. That constant pressure, that scrutiny, that's actually a recipe for mistakes.
How so?
When your team feels stifled, when they feel that pressure, they're more likely to mess up. They avoid taking risks. They underperform.
Wow. So instead of building a high-performing team, you're creating an environment of fear, and that actually sabotages you.
Exactly. It's like shooting yourself in the foot.
And then it creates this vicious cycle. The more you micromanage, the less your team trusts you.
Right. And the less empowered they feel to perform.
And then when they underperform, you get even more scared of being judged, so you micromanage even more.
It's a toxic spiral, really hard to break free from.
And, all of these fears, they all tie into something really important. Trust. Or rather, a lack of it. A trust deficit.
Yeah, that's a key point. The trust deficit, it can show up in a lot of ways.
Like how?
Well, you might see it in a sales leader who just doesn't trust their team's abilities. They're always questioning their judgment, second-guessing every decision.
Micromanaging, basically.
Exactly. Or you might have a leader who doesn't trust the sales process itself. They feel like they have to intervene at every stage, even if it disrupts things and makes their team lose confidence.
Interesting. So it's not always about not trusting others.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it's about a lack of self-trust. Maybe the sales leader doubts their own ability to lead from a distance, to delegate effectively, to handle the pressure without resorting to control tactics.
That's a really good point. It's not always about the team. It could be about the leader's own insecurities.
Right, that need to prove their worth by always being in the middle of everything.
So we have these fears driving micromanagement, and then we have this underlying lack of trust adding fuel to the fire.
It's a dangerous combination.
It is. But there's another piece of the puzzle here. These old-fashioned ideas about leadership that just refuse to die.
Oh, absolutely. Like the myth that control equals competence, that a good leader is always on top of everything, checking up on everyone, making all the calls.
The classic image of the busy boss running around barking orders, creating chaos.
Right. But as we've seen, just because you're busy doesn't mean you're productive. And just because you're controlling everything doesn't mean you're effective.
In fact, that kind of command and control leadership style, it can be really counterproductive, especially in sales.
Totally. It crushes creativity, discourages new ideas, and makes people dependent instead of empowered.
And it's exhausting for everyone involved. The sales leader is stressed out trying to control everything. The team feels demotivated and disengaged.
It's a recipe for burnout, and ultimately for worse sales performance.
The exact opposite of what you want.
Exactly. What's interesting is that there are so many other leadership styles that have been proven to work better, especially in today's fast-paced sales world. Things like coaching, mentoring, servant leadership.
Approaches that focus on empowering the team, right?
Yeah, exactly. Building collaboration, creating a culture of trust and respect.
I think that's a crucial point. It's about moving away from being the boss and becoming more of a coach.
Exactly. Instead of telling people what to do every step of the way, you're guiding them, supporting them, helping them reach their full potential.
That's a really powerful shift in thinking.
It is. And it can make a world of difference in the success of your sales team.
Now, that brings us to a question I'm sure a lot of people are asking. How do we actually make that shift? How do we get away from that micromanaging mindset and create a sales culture where our teams can truly thrive?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. But luckily, we have some answers.
We do, and that's what we'll be diving into next.
Sounds good. I'm excited to hear more.
It starts with awareness. Sales leaders need to recognize they're doing it.
Recognize those micromanaging habits.
Yeah, those subtle ways they might be holding their team back.
Right.
Ask yourself, am I always second-guessing my team's decisions?
Do I have to be in on every little detail?
Yeah, even when it's not necessary.
Am I just clinging to control when my team can clearly handle it?
Right.
Self-awareness is key.
Yeah.
But even when you see it, those tendencies, it can be really hard to change, especially when the pressure is on. So what can sales leaders actually do to loosen up, to start empowering their teams?
One of the best things you can do is training. Invest in sales-specific training.
Sales-specific.
Yeah, that focuses on building trust and delegating effectively. I want to emphasize that sales-specific part. Because a lot of those generic leadership programs, they just don't cut it for sales.
They're too general.
Yeah, sales is different. It has its own unique challenges, its own dynamics.
So what would that kind of specialized training look like? What skills should sales leaders be working on?
It's about learning how to figure out your team's strengths, their weaknesses, where they need to grow, and then how to delegate tasks in a way that makes them feel confident, empowered.
Instead of micromanaged.
Right. It's about setting clear expectations, goals that are actually achievable, and giving them support, the right amount, without hovering, without micromanaging every step.
It's about trusting your team to do what they were hired to do.
Exactly. Give them the space, the freedom to own their work, to come up with creative solutions.
And to be accountable for the result.
Right. And it's also about changing your mindset from boss to coach.
I like that.
Instead of dictating, you're guiding, you're mentoring, you're supporting their growth.
You're creating a safe space to take risks. to learn from mistakes and become better salespeople.
Exactly.
It sounds like communication is a big part of this.
It's huge.
Being able to explain your expectations clearly, to give feedback that's actually helpful, to create an environment where people feel like they can speak up, share ideas, talk about their challenges.
Communication is absolutely key. And it's not just about giving orders. It's about truly listening, understanding your team's perspective, making them feel heard, valued, like they're part of something.
Now, let's be real. Sales is about results.
Bottom line.
There are quotas, targets, and that pressure is no joke. So how can sales leaders balance that need for results with this idea of empowering the team? How do you let go of control without sacrificing performance?
It's a tough balance, but it can be done. One key strategy is setting realistic expectations. If the goals are crazy high, the workload is insane, it creates this environment of stress and anxiety.
Which leads to micromanaging.
Exactly.
So it's about setting challenging goals, but making sure they're attainable.
Yes. And that your team has what they need to succeed, the resources, the support, without feeling overwhelmed.
Or like they're going to get in trouble for every little thing.
Right. And another thing is accepting that mistakes will happen.
Nobody's perfect.
Exactly. You need to create a culture where it's okay to fail, where people can learn from their mistakes without fear of being punished.
That's how they grow.
Right. That's how they get better. That's how innovation happens.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main thing you want our listeners to take away from all this? What's the one thing they can do right now to start breaking free from micromanagement and empower their sales teams to really succeed?
I'd say it boils down to trust. Trust your team, trust the sales process.
Ask the system.
Yeah, and trust yourself. Let go of that need to control everything.
It's hard, but yeah.
It is. And instead, focus on building an environment where your team feels supported, feels empowered.
Like they can do their best work.
Yeah, where they feel inspired.
So it's about ditching that old micromanagement playbook.
Throwing it out the window.
And embracing a leadership style that's all about growth, innovation.
And top-tier sales performance.
Because in the end, that's what drives results.
Yeah.
A team that feels empowered.
Absolutely.
That's sales success. That's what it's all about.